Hey guys, welcome back to Auxano podcast. I'm the host, Alexis Deseo.
I'm super happy that my older brother, AJ, or Alexis Deseo, has come up to Virginia. He's actually from Southern California. It means a lot that you came down. One of the biggest things that I always wanted to do was I wanted a podcast with family. And I think that not many people get the opportunity. Not many people get the support. So it means a lot that you are here. Kuya AJ Deseo. Kuya in Tagalog means older brother, and I refuse to call my older brother by just his name per Filipino standards.
Yeah, I was wondering if you're gonna clarify that for your audience. I was like,
Yeah, I'm not gonna call you AJ. It's just too weird for me. But without further ado, let's get into it.
okay.
So, who are you and what do you do?
Well, my name is Alexis AJ Deseo. Planning on starting my own coffee company. Have the truck all ready to go. Well, not all ready to go. It's still undergoing finishing touches. Hopefully launch in the next month or so. Fely's Coffee Company, named after our grandmother, and primarily going to be sourcing beans from the Philippines, roasting them eventually on my own, and then eventually scale up to a brick and mortar shop. But yeah, starting the coffee company has led me down a path for a bunch of other ventures that I eventually want to get into. So it's been a fun few months. Started the LLC back in April. It's December now, so what is that, 8 months?
Yeah.
Around 8 months. Yeah, so it's been a fun, I've learned a lot of things. I've messed up a few things, so it's been a fun journey. The reason I was starting it was I was part of a round of layoffs at Coinbase last year, after only working there for like 3 months. And then after joining another company as a contractor, I saw like 25% of the workforce get laid off again. So I decided, at least if I own my own company, I can see the layoffs coming, and it wouldn't be a surprise. So, yeah, I think I've always wanted to do something with food related. I love cooking. I love coffee, as you know. And yeah, I just figured if I don't take a risk now, then I'll probably regret it for the rest of my life. So.
Yeah, I do resonate with that so much because, well, one, I mean, I get that we're brothers, but just like my time in the military, I remember just talking to you about how bitter I was.
Yeah.
It was the conversation I was having with, like, the highest in command. It was our commanding officer.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked what I was doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And the commanding officer was saying nothing. Just wait in line.
Right. Because you weren't getting promoted, right? Even
Yeah.
after all your hard work. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and what's crazy is looking up the pay scale between how hard I was working, like from E3 to E4 was an extra $100. So I was I was breaking my back for an extra $100, or essentially an extra $50 for 2 weeks.
Oh, it was 100 each month.
Yeah.
It wasn't even 100 every check.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So harder. Excuse me. So as per ritualistic with my other podcast episodes, we're gonna do the same.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get deep. So starting with level 1, it's icebreaker,
Uh-huh.
deep, and then deeper.
Okay.
So you get to read 2 of the cards,
Mm.
and then you just pick one. But lately, people have liked the cards so much they just answer both.
Oh, okay.
I'll leave it up to you,
Okay.
or you could bully me into doing whatever you want.
Okay.
So starting off level 1, icebreaker.
Okay. Ooh. These are both fun questions. What was your favorite food growing up? And then, what is your favorite place to get coffee or tea? I'll answer this one first. Favorite place to get coffee or tea? I'm in Anaheim right now. I was working for a distribution company for other coffee shops in Anaheim, managing their inventory, and they opened up their own um, coffee shop. So the name of that coffee shop is Golden State Coffee Roasters, and that is in Placentia, California. So if you're listening and you're out there, go check them out. They have a beautiful shop. They do the roasting over there, so it's always nice to visit old coworkers. I know the roaster well. We used to work at a coffee shop in Riverside like years ago, so I go visit once in a while. Luckily, I have my own espresso machine at home, so usually I will make it myself. But if I do go out, it's usually to Golden State Coffee Roasters. So yeah, that would be coffee or tea. Favorite place. What was your favorite food growing up? I had a brief stint under chef, spelled SHEF, doing home delivery, especially when the pandemic was going strong, like early 2020, and then into 2021. And favorite food growing up was inang's pinakbet. And if you don't know what that is, if you're not Filipino, it's basically a medley of vegetables and usually pork belly, but you can make it with any type of protein. But very simple dish. Like I found a recipe online randomly, and it happened to taste almost exactly how I remembered it for Inang's food. So that would probably be my favorite growing up. Whenever we'd go to family parties, and that dish would be out in the tray, like me and Manang would be like, "Oh, who made this?" Because if it was like one specific auntie or another, we'd be like, it's fine. But if I knew Inang made it, I was like,
Just gonna scoop it all up.
Yeah. So that would probably be, I guess, my favorite food growing up. We didn't have it often; it wasn't an everyday thing, but
Yeah.
After she passed and during the pandemic, I think it happened for a lot of people where you realize that work isn't everything. So, I realized myself that I loved cooking food, but I'd never actually attempted cooking Filipino food. And that's kind of what got me back into remembering Inang's pinakbet was the thing that got me back into trying to cook our culture's food.
The culinary arts.
Yeah.
To non-Filipinos, Manang means older sister. In our tribe's language, they speak Ilocano and not Tagalog. And then my Inang means mother or grandmother in Ilocano. Sorry, gotta clear the throat. And Inang means mother, but that was our grandmother. She was essentially our second mom.
Yeah.
I do want to footnote this because Inang and the name Fely have such a strong reason why you started. So I'm going to footnote this and we'll go back to it.
Okay.
But moving on to level 2, this is deep.
Did you ever sneak out of the house when you were a kid? And what is your most valuable possession? Well, I mean, we're old enough now, so I don't mind answering both. Did you ever sneak out of the house when you were a kid?
Wow, multiple times.
No. I think it was only the one time.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I was afraid to do stuff in high school. Yeah, I think it was just one time that I can remember.
Wow, okay.
I wasn't cool enough to get invited to the drinking or smoking parties. But this was when I was dating my then girlfriend. They had a sleepover, or I was part of the dance team in high school. So a few of the other dance members had a sleepover, and I snuck out of the house to just stop by for a few hours, and I went back. And I don't know if Dad or Mom knew, because I think they were like, I think they had asked me if I had used the car or something, or if I'd filled it up. So I think they may have
Oh.
noticed something with the gas. I think Dad did, but I was like, "Nah, I didn't do that at all. What are you talking about?" Um, but they may have known. So, but that was the only time I can remember
Sneaking
like
up.
being sneaky.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so just the one
Okay.
time. Because like back then, that was only my senior year.
Hmm.
Because I didn't have the I didn't have the car until my junior year of high school. So
Right.
yeah,
I missed that Accord, by the way.
yeah, it lasted a long time. I got so many parking tickets with it. What is your most valuable possession? Hmm. Um, I don't know actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't have a lot of fancy things.
Do you mind if
so-
I add an interjection?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be material.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like the sentimental stuff I have. I'm drawing a blank, but when I hear valuable, I immediately think kitchen equipment. So it'd probably be like one of my knives. Um, yeah, probably one of my knives.
Kitchen knives.
Yeah, kitchen equipment.
Your knives are pretty A1, and especially since, like, I mean, shoot, I would call you a chef. I don't know if you would call yourself a chef, but the quality of your food, I would definitely call you a chef.
No.
Anybody that hasn't had it yet is missing out for sure.
I don't think I would consider myself a chef. I like to follow recipes. I don't think I have the creativity for to be a chef. But again, everybody has different. If your definition of a chef is someone who cooks food, then sure, I'm a chef. If your definition of chef is somebody who innovates and creates new dishes, I'm probably not a chef. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just let it slide.
Okay.
But moving on to level 3, this is deeper.
Ooh, what's the most valuable lesson you've learned from a mentor? I like that one. I think I have the answer. And then what is a conversation you've been recently replaying in your head? Okay. I think actually I have an answer for both of them. I'll start with the mentor one. What's the most valuable lesson you've learned from a mentor? That would be that. As you know, I joined a real estate mentorship to learn about real estate, and I took that trip out to Atlanta a few weeks ago, and we looked at different houses. Some were terrible condition, some were really nice condition, and the biggest lesson that I learned was like, it's okay. The worst thing that people can say is no when it comes to sales and stuff. So our mentor was like, yeah, put in an offer on the house after like seeing 2 houses. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, just put an offer. Just offer them, they're asking for 200K, offer them 180. And then we're just like, you can do that? And he's like, yeah, they're just going to say no. Like, and if they say no, then you move on. So it was just like seeing that. It was such a simple concept, like seeing that in action. Seeing it in person was different than watching it on YouTube videos. Basically, somebody giving me permission to fail. Essentially, like it's okay to fail. It's gonna happen. You shouldn't take it so seriously. So that would probably be the greatest lesson, is that it's better to take action than to overanalyze things. Because the more action you take, the more you learn, the faster you learn.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would probably be the greatest lesson. So if anybody listening to this, wants to start their own business, has an idea in their head, you should do it, because the worst thing that can happen is people say no, and then you know what to do after that, after people say no, but you're not gonna get to that point unless you first take action. So take action, and then the results will follow essentially. Yeah. What is a conversation you've recently been replaying in your head? As I was telling you yesterday, a couple days ago, since mom and dad are in the Philippines and I've been sleeping in their room, I've kind of been, looking at all their stuff that we had said was, excuse me, a nuisance, stuff that was like a headache, all their pots and pans and knickknacks from the years, and I realized, that they grew up in a time that was, they didn't have technology like us. They didn't have videos, cameras, stuff to record your everyday experiences. They had, stuff that was associated with specific times and places. And after kind of realizing that, I started replaying the conversations about how they would ask us for help with tech stuff, like very simple stuff, like, "Oh, can you upload the pictures to the computer?"
Map the printer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I remember a conversation where mom called me while I was at UCR, and she was like, I need help with the printer. And I was like, okay. And she's like, it's not printing. And I'm just like, I was like, I don't know. In my head, I was like, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, I can't see the screen. Luckily, I had enough sense to calmly be like, I'm sorry. Like, without seeing the screen, like, I don't really know what's going on. Like, I can't troubleshoot it.
Right.
While I'm away from home. She's like, okay, sorry. And we ended the call. But I've been replaying those. Can you help me with X activity or troubleshooting? Because I like being 31 now, and we're heading into a new year. I realized that they didn't know what they didn't know, and the only thing they could do was ask for help from me and you and the people close by. So, back then I was like, oh, this is such a hassle, such a chore. Like, just Google it yourself, and
Because we were.
Because that's exactly what we were doing. But obviously, hindsight is 2020. I can look back now and be like, okay, they didn't know what they didn't know. So I've been replaying those conversations in my head recently because it's reminded me to kind of like, when somebody asks you for help, it's made me realize like, oh, they're being vulnerable with you. And I think I did that with you and CJ too. When you'd ask me for help with like math or something, I'd be like, what don't you get? What aren't you understanding?
It reminds me of this meme where like it's like Asian kids. Mm-hmm. It's like, what is 3 plus 3?
Yeah.
And then the next picture would be like, it's 6. Mm-hmm. But like I would be like that fat Asian kid that's like, what? Like you'd be telling me what's 3 plus 3, and I'd be like, yellow.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, like it's a part of growing up. You realize where you went wrong. But yeah, those are the conversations that I've been replaying, and yeah, it. Looking back now, I realize, okay, when somebody asks you for help, they're coming to you from a place of vulnerability. Mm-hmm. You, as a person who has the knowledge, you shouldn't be like, why don't you know better, basically. So yeah, that's what's been replaying on my head recently.
I always found that. Well, I mean, in Big Brother nature, right? Like you, like are the steward of your younger brothers. Mm-hmm. And even though like we've seen you as like, oh man, especially when we were younger, we were thinking of like, oh man, like Kuye is mean. Mm-hmm. But as I've gotten older and like gotten to realize how like, okay, like you weren't just being mean on purpose, like there was a lesson behind it. Mm-hmm. And meeting other people who are not very close with their older brothers, mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you where your compassion comes from. Where does your compassion come from?
I think I was talking about this with Maisha, my girlfriend, for the audience. I think the biggest difference. Well, okay, so I'm gonna preface this to. I'm like speaking to our cousins now at this moment. So Kyle, Camille, Manang, Charlotte, Mona. I think the big like so. We had our mom, we had Kyle and Camille's dad, and we had Mama being Charlotte, Mona, and Manang's mom come here to the U.S. So it's like I call them the big three because they were here the longest.
Yeah.
I think the biggest difference from how we grew up was having Inang in the house.
Yeah.
So just having our grandma in the house primarily, I think that's where the biggest source of or biggest example of compassion came from, because her go-to was like, "Have you eaten yet?" Which is the go-to for a lot of Asian families. They're not necessarily like, "I love you."
Yeah.
They're like, their way of expressing love is, "I'm working hard to put a roof over your head.
I'm
and
feeding you."
Yeah, exactly. So for me, like thinking back, like as long as I can remember, and I've thought about this a while. I'm like, why am I quote unquote like soft? And I think it's probably because of our grandmother. So that's where I think my compassion comes from.
I love it. Yeah, definitely having our to the audience of Auxano, especially you could be Mexican, you could be Korean. It's usually not commonplace in America, but a 3-generational household is common. Like people would flame you for like staying at your parents' house too long if you have the means. In Asia and in many places in Europe, it's common to have a 3-generational household. And I understand that a lot of people might be like, "That's weird. Like, why was your grandma staying with you?" But it's a common occurrence in most places in Asia.
Yeah, especially immigrant families for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Like Maisha's family. Well, her and her sister don't live with her parents anymore, but if they did, it would be 4 generations in a household.
Wow. Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really resonate with Inang being the foundation.
Yeah.
And actually, I remember when our older cousins were asking us, like, "Oh, like, are you a daddy's boy or a mama's boy?" And I love how all 3 of us were like, "Nah, we're granny's boy.
Yeah.
Like, we're a grandma's boy."
Well, yeah, because mom and dad were working.
Yeah.
And they, they did the best they could. But yeah, Inang was the constant at home because she was cooking, she was cleaning, she was always there. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely that would be my source of, or I guess my example when I think of compassion and where I get it from.
Yeah. Pivoting away from Inang for a moment, what did you want to do when you were a kid?
I don't remember having like a specific dream. Like looking back, like I remember playing with Legos or something and building something, and mom was like, "Oh, you should be an engineer." And then when we got closer to college age, like in high school, there's that pressure to be like, "Oh, you should do something medical, like become a doctor or something." But looking back, like I don't physically recall being like in middle school, elementary school, like I'm gonna be X one day. I think a lot of it was thinking, "Oh, I should be this because our family has this expectation." But it was never like, "I want to be this because that's my passion, or that's my dream." I kind of found that in adulthood. Yeah. What about you? Did you always want to be in media? Answer. Answer right now.
No, actually, which is funny. I think the natural order of things was I think it's because like we were always playing like Call of Duty or like Halo together. or like war games. So I've always wanted to be like in the shit. Like I wanted to be in combat. Like I wanted to join the military. And then I did. You know, like I did join the military, and then I realized that the world was, wow, what insanity. You know, like I never saw combat, luckily. Because of the naval police and because of being a combat medic, like we were training for it. But I remember like desiring that. If I'm being honest, like I just wanted to be Solid Snake.
Oh, right.
Like I wanted to go on stealth missions and stuff. And then once that panned away, like I wanted to be like a detective. Like I always wanted to be somebody that was like a shield for people, in defense of others. And then eventually, like I moved on to like mock trial, and I wanted to be a lawyer. So, luckily, I got to accomplish like one of the childhood dreams. But yeah, like media was a stepping stone, I think, to. And I wanted to talk about this later because we were both talking about the 4,000 weeks concept. But now that you are an adult and you're mastering crafts, what life advice would you give your younger self?
Well, definitely. I mean, it's easy to say, don't care about what other people think, but that's something that you kind of learn through age. But if I could go back and younger me would listen, it would be, don't care as much. Don't worry about, actually, let me rephrase. If I could go back and younger me would listen, the thing I would tell them is that the only person you need to be better than is your past self. You don't need to compare yourself to your siblings, your cousins, your friends, because they're just on a different path. So as long as you are consistently growing and learning, then you're doing fine. That would be my advice to younger AJ, because it's definitely, again, I don't know if this. No, I'm pretty sure this is just a universal thing. Parents comparing kids to other kids or other siblings, or other cousins, other families' kids. But yeah, that comparison is it's not good, So that would be what I would tell my younger self. Like, hey, you're going to be compared to a lot of people. Don't worry. Just be better than who you previously were. And luckily, I can say that where I am now, I was better than where I was a year ago. So, yeah.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what about you? What would you tell younger BJ?
I would tell him that you've lost a lot of people that meant a lot to you. Life is not as what you imagine. You're probably not going to be a UFC champion at the age of 17 for whatever reason. You're probably not going to be married at 22 with a white picket fence. I think at the time, like I wanted like a Camaro, like a Chevrolet Camaro. A yellow one, like the one in Transformers.
Like Bumblebee?
Yeah, I wanted the Bumblebee. Yeah, you're probably not going to have it all. And you can have everything you want in life, just not at the same time. And so you have to have patience. Yeah, I think that's the advice I would give my younger self. Be patient.
Yeah.
Be more patient. It's advice I try to give myself now. When I call you because I'm insecure or like worried about my future. Just be more patient.
Yeah, it's funny. Growing up, Dad, I think when we got in trouble, or when I got in trouble, Dad would say stuff like, there's a time and place for everything. And, when you're young, you're like, oh, that's dumb. I want to do it now, But, growing up, you come to realize, like, oh, it is a good thing that X didn't happen when I was younger because I wouldn't have appreciated it. So, yeah, I definitely agree with being patient and just, I guess, being thankful for what you have. But,
yeah. Well, speaking of being patient, I think this is a phenomenal segue to enter back into what we footnoted about Enung. Tell us the origin story of your company's name.
Yeah, so Fely is the name of our grandmother. And I don't know when I decided it, but I always knew that if I were to open something food related, it would be called Fely's. Whether it was a restaurant, whether it was a cafe, it would have been Fely's. So that's, yeah, essentially that's the origin. It's like you said, or like I said earlier, the source of my compassion. So, you know, naming it Fely's is a reminder for me to, you know, share that compassion with your customers, with clients and stuff. So that's essentially what the name is for. It's a reminder that I was lucky enough to receive that kind of love and compassion. I should share it with other people. So
Yeah. And I love how you do it. You share compassion. You share your product with what you love. And what you love is definitely coffee.
yeah,
For as long as I can remember, I just remember like walking into like, I don't know, like God forbid I walked into like a Starbucks and be like, man, it's not AJ's coffee. I was like, this is piss water. And like I remember constantly waking up when we were living together at one point, and like you were like just starting, you would make the coffee through like the drip method. I think like through the Chemex at the time also. And I just remember thinking like, wow, like Kui is actually like following what he wants to do. And I think that kind of gave me permission to do the same.
Oh,
And through like a series of events, it's interesting, right? Because like going back to like even our parents, they were saying that you need to be a doctor or a lawyer or, you know, somebody super successful.
yeah. But I think that's just what they were told.
Yeah.
You know, again, they don't know what they don't know. They didn't realize that there's a world outside of those professions.
Yeah. And well, speaking of professions too, like I love how with what you're doing, correct me if I'm wrong. So it is not an acti, it is a daihatsu.
Yes, that is the full, I guess, model name is of the truck is a Daihatsu Mira walk-through van, and it looks like a tiny little school bus.
Say that 3 times fast. So when I actually looked up on Google, and I'm probably gonna like try to
Insert a
insert a picture of it. Like I was looking at it and I was like, dude, this is so different. Because I see coffee trucks all the time, like out here, just in this side of Virginia, and I've also seen coffee trucks outside at our what would you call it, like home base in California. And I think like, wow, I saw yours and I was like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Like it's so unique.
Yeah.
And then you're probably gonna have like those like car like nerds. They're like, wait, the wheel's on the right side, bro.
Yeah. It's a Japanese import. It's a right-hand drive. It's a stick shift manual. I don't know how to drive. I've never driven on the right side, and I've never driven a stick shift, so it's going to be a learning process. So
it's not hard. It's not as hard as you might think.
Yeah. It's just going to take practice. But yeah, the whole reason for like that truck is like you said, like you've seen coffee trucks everywhere. And they're all kind of the same. They're all these like big boxy previous FedEx trucks, and they're just big. They're loud, or they're like a Mercedes Sprinter van, and it just like it doesn't look aesthetic to me at least. So I remember when news about the Cybertruck came out, I was like, oh, I want the Cybertruck, and then Maisha would kind of like roll her eyes and be like, that's it's ugly. It's disgusting.
It reminded me of the Pokemon Polygon.
Yeah, it's like super rough shape. Yeah, essentially. And then luckily over time, I'm just like, why do I want this? It's just like I wanted it as a status symbol to be like, oh, I have a Tesla. Part of it was like, oh, I want an electric truck, and then part of it was like, oh, this thing's so weird. I love it. But then one day Maisha was like, oh, this is my dream truck. And she sent me an Instagram post or a TikTok of a Honda Acti, a mini K truck, and I was like, oh, that's genius. Like that's great. And then when I had the idea to do a coffee truck, I was like, I don't want a big boxy UPS truck, FedEx truck. And then I started researching mini trucks and like, could I turn this into a food truck? And could I make the concept a reality with this vehicle? And luckily, there's like a whole community in Japan where I forget the company's name, but basically they're like an app company that signs up these K truck owners, and they all serve different food. They're like ramen, pot stickers, coffee, noodles, whatever. And they'll partner with these vehicle owners, and then they'll send them to specific office park locations. And so instead of like a cafeteria or whatever, this office park has like a plethora of different food trucks to choose from for lunch each day. And all of those trucks are mini trucks. They're not like big UPS trucks. So I was like, oh, I could copy this over here. And I started like just researching different coffee companies, like Coffee X K truck. And there's like nothing out here in the U.S. At least that I could find. The only one that I could find was a company out in Florida who has the same model van as I do, but they're doing it slightly differently. Like mine, luckily has that pop up on the side window that I can serve out of. Theirs doesn't, and they have to pull the espresso machine out of the back and then set up like a tent outside. But yeah, that's the only one that I could find that was like serving coffee out of a K truck here in the U.S. I was like, I got my wow factor by finding this truck. So yeah, it was like from it took like a few days for me to find the truck once I started like asking people, because for those that don't know, these Japanese imports, these K trucks, light trucks, specifically in California, it's like super hard to get registration. You have to pay. I think there's only one laboratory in all of California that can convert or do the testing for these imports. They're in Santa Ana, California, and it costs like, I think $7,500 just to get the testing done. And then if you need to do any repairs or whatever, that's additional cost. So I was like, okay, this is never going to happen. I'll have to move on to another truck. But then I noticed like other Instagram users who have California license plates on their K truck, and I was like, how did you get license plates? And usually the answer was like, oh, I know somebody at the DMV, and they're able to kind of help you out. But luckily I was able to find another way. But anyway, I messaged this one particular user, and he was like, oh, my guy doesn't work at the DMV anymore or something like that. So, but let me add you to the group chat. And I was like, okay, group chat, great. And this is like within an hour of messaging him. And so he added me to the group chat. He's like, hey guys, welcome, AJ. He's looking for a truck, or he's looking to do registration or whatever. And then somebody was like, are you looking for a truck now, or do you already have one? And I was like, oh, I'm looking for one. And then if you guys have any mechanic recommendations, like let me know for future purposes. And another guy was like, oh, let me DM you. And so he's an importer in Orange County also. And he was like, what are you looking for? And I was like, oh, I was planning to do this concept, like put a coffee cart on top of a K truck, a Honda Acti specifically. And he was like, oh, that might be a little tough because it's like high off the ground. If you need to take the coffee cart on and off, it's going to be like a steep angle or whatever. So he's like, this might work out better for you. And he showed me the Daihatsu mirror walkthrough van. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, at first I didn't really enjoy the look of it. And he was like, and the pictures that he showed me had like that side opening already. And I was like, yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. And then I assumed that that cutout window is like extra. And he's like, no, some of them come with it. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. Let me ask like my other friend who has one. I think he's had it for a while now, and I think it's already in California. So I was like, send me the details. He's like, I think he's selling it for $7,500, and like after he told me that, I was like, okay, like I think I have to see this and probably buy it, because $7,500 for a truck that's already in California is like a steal.
Yeah.
You could buy, I think the cheapest they go for is like close to like $2,000, but then you have to pay for
imports.
Yeah, if you don't know how to do it yourself, you have to pay somebody to do import and picking it up from the dock and stuff, and that's like another $2-3 grand. So all in all, like cost could, for like the cheapest, not good quality car, it might be like $4,000, $5,000. So for me to already have an already working vehicle with the cutout window, already in California, for $7,500, when my original costs for the vehicle was like, my original estimate was going to be like 30 grand to get it all
established,
repaired and stuff. I was like, okay, I'll deal with how it looks for that price point. So I messaged the guy, Moshi Motors, and he's like, yeah, I'm in Palmdale. Come see it, next weekend or whatever. Or literally, like, I think from messaging that first guy, Hella Bonkers on Instagram.
What a name.
Yeah, he's also Filipino.
Okay.
Yeah. From messaging him and then talking to that guy, Joe, and then Moshi Motors, it was literally within the span of like a couple hours. And then that was like on a Tuesday or Wednesday or something, and then on that Saturday I drove up there with Manang to go check it out.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I was, because again, like the price point, the body of the car and the way it looked, like it was practically like halfway done already. And then I asked him, I was like, oh, what was your plans for this? And he's like, I was gonna buy it for myself, like it was gonna be for my daughters just to play around with, because he has a bunch of different imports.
Yeah.
But he's like, but realistically, they're never gonna drive it. They're never gonna use it. And I was like, has anybody else, wanted it? And he's like, yeah, there were a few who were thinking of doing coffee carts or some kind of food with it, but he was like, they didn't want it because it was a stick shift. I was like, dang it, it's a stick shift. But I was like, all the stars were aligning, kind of thing. It's like, hey, buy this vehicle. It's like, it's here for you.
Yeah.
You should take this opportunity to use it before it goes away. I was like, all right, I gotta take it. Yeah, it was kismet. It felt like fate, because it was like literally within a week I was able to get the vehicle I wanted with under like way under the price point that I wanted.
Yeah.
So
talk about startup costs being completely.
Yeah. It was literally cut in half, because my original estimate was like 30 grand just for the truck and getting it renovated. But with the cost of the car and then the restoration, it was literally cut in half.
Yeah.
Like $7,500 for the truck, and then $10,000 for the renovation.
I think this is a phenomenal segue to move into why you believe in leverage.
Yeah, so leverage, aka credit, both personal and business. Like I think a lot of immigrant parents, even a lot of American families, we are taught from a young age credit is like a
It's plague. It's cancer.
yeah, it's an in case of emergencies use only. It's not like don't use it
tool.
like cash. Yeah. But, you know, it is in case of if you have bad financial habits, it's a bad thing. Um, one of my one of the people I was able to connect with through the mentorship I bought, Rene Vasquez, Mr. Credit Gems. He basically said that credit is like lighter fluid. Whatever habits you currently have, it'll just amplify it. So if you have shitty financial habits, you don't have a budget, you just spend every month, you spend more than you make. If you have access to $200,000 in credit cards, you're gonna use all 200. You're gonna max it out on depreciating stuff. You're gonna max it out on
BS.
the newest iPhone, the newest shoes, the newest car. You know, but if you have good financial habits, if you have a budget and plan in place, you have goals in mind that you want to reach. It's like when somebody gives you 200,000, you're like, great, I know how to use this. I know how to deploy it. So that's essentially what I did with the truck. I went down this rabbit hole of business funding, and I stumbled across a radical marketer on YouTube, and his videos about various videos about business funding. And one of his videos was like an hour-long video talking about Navy Federal and like the different products that they offer. And I was like, who talks about Navy Federal for an hour? And so I watched it, and I was like, oh, I could utilize, you know, a personal loan to get started up with business. So that's what I did. And essentially, up to 50,000, if you are a good customer of Navy Federal, you've been banking with them for a while, they have up to 50,000 in stated income, meaning, or you can borrow up to 50,000 on stated income, meaning you can basically just list your income, and they're not going to verify it. They're just going to be like, okay, here's 50,000. And I was like, what? So I did that, and I borrowed 30,000 through a personal loan, and they gave it to me in 5 minutes through the app. So if you have Navy Federal, they're a great resource. So I got the 30,000, used that to buy the truck, and then use it to pay the first half of the renovations, bought some equipment, and then I started learning about business credit and how it's even better than personal credit. So now that I have my LLC, I'm in the process of like applying for more funding to, you know, to get more equipment, more coffee beans, more cups, more supplies. So when you have a plan and when you have good financial habits, like regular cash habits, when you apply for funding, when you get credit, like it's just going to take you even further. It's not a tool to just, or it's not an in case of emergency. It's a weapon that you can use to achieve your dreams. You know, now whether like that's the system that we live in here in the U.S. Whether or not that's a good thing, you know, that's a conversation for another day. But that's the reality that we live in here in the U.S. We have access to capital a lot more easily than we think, than we were taught growing up. You know, so yeah, I'm a huge believer in first getting good regular financial habits, like building a budget, the fundamentals, your systems, getting that in place, and then you go apply for credit, and then you can launch your dreams. You can start a podcast, you can start a coffee company, you can become a consultant, you can start a clothing brand, like anything. Yeah. So yeah, I think I'm a huge believer in leverage, in credit, provided you have a plan for that money.
And good discipline.
Exactly. Because, again, if you don't have a plan and you just, like, apply for credit, and you don't do anything, or worse, you use it for the wrong things, then, yeah, it could dig you in a deeper hole.
It reminds me of... Maybe you'll laugh at this. Do you remember at the end of John Wick 3 where Winston shoots John Wick off of the building,
Uh-huh.
and he like goes back to the River King, and the River
Mhm.
King is like, "Are you pissed off, John?" He's like, "Yeah." So like I remember doing like a deep
Such a
dive.
stupid movie. I'm sorry, Keanu Reeves is a great actor. It's a great action film, but it's not my favorite story. I think one of my favorite. I think we watched it in theaters. Me, Misha, and Luis. I forgot who else was there. I know I think the three of us were there, and one of his lines was like, "I need a gun."
But okay, so the point I was trying to make though too was like his one-liners are so funny
Yeah,
that like when because he's supposed to be like this emissary of revenge.
yeah.
He's like, I'm gonna like whatever Vigo's like, he's like, commit with
Uh-huh.
sheer will.
Yeah.
And so like I remember doing a deep dive on money
Uh-huh.
and like how the 1% operate.
Mhm.
Like how are these motherfuckers so rich?
Mhm.
And when I realized they just shuffle money around,
Yeah.
like from like 0% APR stuff, like
Mhm.
that scene literally played in my head where it's like, "Are you pissed off?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So
Yeah, the whole shuffling around debt. So this phrase has stuck in my mind ever since I heard it. And again, it was after I bought the mentorship from Radical Marketer.
Mhm.
Side note, like I had never bought a mentorship before, and I was like, "What is a mentorship?
right,
Like, what am I even paying for?"
like what are they teaching that I can't learn myself?
Exactly. Yeah. And it was like $1,500, and I was like, $1,500, like.
Which really isn't that bad in hindsight.
Yeah, it's insane. Like knowing, like after, like he has so much content in his vault, in his paid mentorship.
Mhm.
Like I don't have enough bandwidth to watch all the content.
All of them.
It's insane how much he delivers. So, um, yeah, but all the YouTuber people who are doing business funding all said the same thing. You could learn all this stuff on your own.
Yeah.
But then you would be spending like months, years
I want to
piecing the things together.
I want to interject because I feel like it falls back onto that philosophy or psychological principle of the paradox effect.
Mhm.
Because like we could learn it ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We could go to Graham Stephan, Andre G, whoever, Ali Abdal,
Mhm.
right? But because you have so many choices, you just start watching the videos and you no longer execute.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so that's why, in my personal opinion, if you have good money habits
Mhm.
and it's in line with your goals, yeah, I do think certain mentorships are important.
Yeah, and I got super lucky. And again, like I went back and forth for a while. I didn't buy the mentorship right away. I think it was like a month at least before I pulled the trigger. But once I was in there, one of the lines that stood out during one of the master classes was, "The rich own nothing but control everything."
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just like, "Oh, that's true." Like that's how they're able to get away with not paying taxes because they're shuffling debt around basically
Yeah.
and lining their pockets.
Hence the John Wick 3 quote.
Yeah,
I got pissed off.
Yeah. So again, whether the current system is good or bad, people are gonna have different opinions, but it's a fact that that's the society we live in. So if you are an entrepreneur and you want to get ahead, you either go viral or you learn how to take advantage of the system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of systems, you also have read James Clear's Atomic Habits, and
That might actually be my most valuable possession. Actually, now that going back to it,
Atomic Habits.
in recent history, in the past month, like that is probably my most valuable asset because it was literally
World
life
changing.
changing. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that it. Maybe mine was Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Maybe I would even say like to date it would be, but who am I to say it could still remain constant. But I have said it pretty often. Actually, it was one of the first things I asked Coach Adam. He was the first episode I had. How we don't rise to the level of our ambitions, we fall to our systems.
Exactly.
What forge did you have to build your systems upon?
Can you rephrase that? What do you mean?
Yeah. So like, building a system is not, you don't wake up and be like, I got it.
Mhm.
Easy.
Yeah.
How did you build the system that works for you now?
Oh, okay. It was like bits and pieces. I think. Uh, bullet journaling. I think you're the one that introduced me to that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you were the one. Bullet journaling was definitely a huge piece of the system.
Mm.
Yeah, that single act alone was probably kind of what kickstarted me down this route. Um, but yeah, it was just like taking little bits and pieces from videos I've heard, people I know, stuff I've read, and kind of just putting it together. But the book, Atomic Habits, kind of just like crystallized everything, and it explained like why I was doing the things that I was doing. And the book does a great, like, I had bought the book because I was like, I want to work out more. I want to work on my business consistently and stuff. So I went in with the knowledge of, or the expectation of like just building, better habits, like on a surface level. But the book essentially makes you question like your whole identity as a person.
Yeah.
Because you could say, I'm going to work out more, I'm going to eat healthier, but if you don't have your clothes out the night before, if you don't weigh out your food, if you don't have a gym membership, then all those goals are just dreams.
Words.
Exactly. And the book is just great for anybody who's looking to do self-improvement, because it essentially asks you or forces you to think about the type of person you want to become versus the things you want to achieve. So instead of telling yourself, I'm going to go to the gym, you should be telling yourself, like, I want to be a healthy person. And a healthy person goes to the gym. So, the book was life-changing because it kind of forced me to have, like, an existential crisis. I'm like, oh, who do I want to become? Who am I currently? What do I have to do to change to become the person I want to become? So, yeah, if you haven't read the book, it's great. Sponsor us, James Clear.
You know what's actually really funny about that, James Clear, is I was actually at another workshop here at the it was like a 757 Startup Studios workshop, and like everybody was like, or like the director of the program was like, what does everybody need? Like, well, we'll try to get it. It's like, oh, like I need funding. Oh, I need staff. And I was like, I need guests. And he was like, well, like, what are you looking for? And I was like, like, I just want anybody and everybody. And he was like, I mean, that's great, but like, what is your focus? And at the time, like, I mean, in ideation, it was just anybody that had an interesting story and just wanted to come on and, just wanted to be a part of Auxano. But he made a good point about how, like, you should probably target, like, big name guests too. And, since then, like, I've had the MapQuest founder. I've had a very, I wish if you'd had more time, it'd be pretty cool to meet him. His name is Gino Kinton. Phenomenal man. And it was funny because we talk about James Clear so much on the podcast that he was like, why don't you just ask James Clear? The worst he can say is no.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of going back full circle to the point.
Yeah.
And I was like,
action.
Yeah, action over. And it was like this whole stumbling block. I haven't done it yet because I've actually been busy with like the guests that are actually coming on. But it was just so interesting to hear that perspective. It was like, just go for the big fish.
Yeah.
The worst I can say is no. And I remember like watching like something that Gary Vaynerchuk was saying was like, it took a year, I think, for them to get what's his face, Warren Buffett on. It took him a year. Like and Gary V is a big name. Yeah. But I would say that Warren Buffett is a bigger name when it comes to certain niches like finance.
Yeah.
And Gary Vaynerchuk is a business podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, like kind of going full circle about failing forward and wanting
Mm-hmm.
to consume that type of content. I also think that the content that you consume is the content that you become.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I wanted to ask you is like, I know that yes, like you have a coffee company, but I also think that there's so much knowledge within that sphere that you could educate other people about.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever thought about delving into content creation?
Yeah, absolutely. For now, like at least in my head, the coffee company will have its own, Instagram profile, business profile, and I'll have my own stuff with products that I like.
Like a personal brand?
Yeah, personal brand. In Atomic Habits, there's a section where one of the people that he writes about says, if you can't be better, be different.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
The Daihatsu.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And like, I'm not the best chef. I'm not the best credit person. I don't have all the knowledge. I don't make the best content. But I know like a little bit enough about each thing that I could kind of, put my own twist on it. So yeah, eventually, for sure. Like I was telling you, I have a couple skit ideas for ads and product reviews and whatnot, and just release it, because again, like, one of the identities that I want to become a content creator, because being able to launch my own personal brand is only going to help coffee, the coffee company, and I'm kind of just like putting myself out there basically to see which lane sticks or garners the most attention. Like at first, like 8 months ago, I was like, I want to do coffee, but now 8 months down the road, I was like, oh, coffee is just a stepping stone. Coffee can lead to credit, helping people with their personal finances. Coffee can lead to content creation. Coffee can lead to education. So yeah, content creation is definitely on my mind, and is something that I've also again been a little bit afraid to do, because I was like, oh, I'm not going to be popular. I'm going to worry about what other people think of me, and then I kind of just had to take a step back, and it's like, well, all you have to do is be better than your previous self, and previous self was not a content creator. Previous self was not putting himself out there to be vulnerable with people. So if I can do that, then that's one of the goals I want to achieve. So yeah, content creation is definitely on my mind. And if anybody listening is thinking about being a content creator, you should absolutely go for it. Again, Rene Vasquez, aka Mr. Credit Gems, one of his goals is to basically extract info and help other people build their personal brand, because he believes that everybody has content worth sharing, and I wholeheartedly agree. Like we have like Luis, he could start a podcast about drag races, just reviewing RuPaul's Drag Race episodes. Maisha has loves Christian fundamentalism and talking about how, like, when religion goes too far, and the effects it has on people. And like my other friend Isabel has a hot chicken. She likes hot chicken, like hot chicken sandwiches, and she's like, I have a list of hot chicken places that I've reviewed. And I was like, when I realized like I wanted to be a content creator, I was like, everybody can be a content creator. Like, those are all like passions that people have that they can put out in the world. And while we may think we are unique and special, there's billions of us on the planet. You're not as unique as you think. And while that may be sad, it's a good thing, because that means you have an audience. You have a group of people that you can connect with that share your values, your beliefs, your passions. So yeah, content creation has been on my mind, and for sure, I'd like to make content, whichever form that may take. And if anybody is thinking about becoming a content creator, you should absolutely go for it. So
I couldn't agree more. To kind of steal Gary Vaynerchuk's wisdom again, like let's just say like even if it's like a, which I think that it shouldn't be in ideation only. Like you should do it as soon as the coffee cart launches.
Mhm.
Like as soon as like you're on the streets, you should have like either Maisha or Luis, or maybe even like Manang, like just shooting your day in the life.
yeah,
And like what
oh
you
yeah,
do,
for sure.
and then maybe if we're lucky, we get some coffee porn. Just like the pour over, like
Yeah, the B-roll.
yeah, Joshua Wiseman, B-roll,
Sponsor us.
sponsor us, Joshua Wiseman.
You should ask him on the podcast.
Eventually, I will.
Yeah.
Eventually, I will. Actually, so funny enough, and we were just listening to him on our road trip back from Georgia. I actually want to be able to have Graham Stephan on the podcast because he was the one who got me into real estate investing. And what's crazy is I remember like being in middle school, and I was like, dude, why is our family broke?
Oh yeah.
Why? And so like it was around that time that he had like, oh my god, it was crazy. He had like 10,000 subscribers. Never would I have ever thought that he'd ever get like the 4 to 7 million that he's gotten, but I'm so happy that he did.
Yeah.
So I'd want Graham Stephan on. I was telling Gino Kinton, the influencer guy, I wanted to be able to like interview Pacquiao like in Tagalog. Yeah, like I feel like that'd be pretty cool.
How's your Tagalog?
Okay lang. Konti lang.
Nagsasalita ka ng Tagalog. Huh?
Yes. But see, the sad part is after Inang passed away, I lost it. Like I had no reason to speak it anymore. Because like, do you remember the days when Inang would be like, "That's a cow"? Be like, "No, Inang, that's a couch."
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm surrounding myself though with like more Filipino speaking friends. Especially like right out of the military. It's kind of funny because I was like the only Asian person within like miles.
Yeah.
Moving aside from that.
No. It's funny that you bring up being Filipino because I think growing up, we kind of wanted to distance ourselves from
Our
that identity.
Yeah.
Right? And it's such a cliche story, but it's really true. Like you grow up and you're like, you have different lunches from other people.
Yeah.
Your house smells different. You have different things. And you compare yourself to the normal American kids, and it's just something that you have to learn growing up. It's like it's okay to be
Different.
It's okay because we're all different, And looking back, you're like, or back then I was like, oh, I want Lunchables, and then looking back, I'm like, dude, Lunchables is ass.
Yeah.
Like I want,
buns.
like. We were so lucky that we got
What we got?
hand-packed lunches from Inang and mom and dad. So I remember going to UCR and I was like, oh, I don't want to join the Filipino club. Like that's I don't want to be Filipino.
Yeah.
And ironically, like some of my closest friends are Filipino.
Yeah.
Like I lived with my old housemates. They were all in the Filipino club, and I was like, why didn't I join? Like, but again, it's something that you have to kind of learn as you grow up. It's your history, your ancestry, your culture is not something to be ashamed of. But yeah, I think part of it too, it's like that's why we don't speak Tagalog, is because we wanted to assimilate.
Speak better English.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And ironically, I think I was reading somewhere on TikTok and Instagram how like Filipinos from the Philippines will also be like, oh, he's not a true Filipino.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another factor. But
it's so interesting that you say that too, because I literally remember, I get a little offended, so I might get a little heated here, but like I remember like going up to like, because there's a lot of like Filipino workers that work at like military bases or like I don't know the Nex or like a grocery store on base. And I remember like oh, like, anong balita po? Like, how are you doing?
Mhm.
And they would call out my accent.
Oh yeah.
They would be like, Colonia. And Colonia means like, oh, you've been colonized. It's like, I'm so offended by the truth.
yeah. But again, like that's like something that you have to learn. It's like
Yeah.
good on you for trying, for
Yeah.
being vulnerable, for stepping outside of your comfort zone.
And shame on them for being so close-minded.
Yeah, but again, you know, they don't know what they don't know.
What they don't know.
Exactly, and that's like whenever I come across like an ignorant person or a mean person, I used to default to like attacking, but now I default to like, oh, I feel bad for them because they could be sharing a wonderful experience with another human being, but they decide to attack. And a lot of times it's just how they were raised, but you know, a lot of times they do have that knowledge and they decide to. So yeah, if any immigrant or child of immigrant families is listening and is ashamed of their culture and heritage, you know, you shouldn't be. You should try to connect with your ancestry. And if you are an immigrant parent or an immigrant family who is making fun of those children who are trying, then yeah, shame on you for not, because instead of when you antagonize, you're just making the other person retreat back into what they believed in the first place, which is like, oh, our culture is not worth anything, or our culture is not worth learning. So if you have the knowledge and the wisdom to share, you should share it. You should not make fun of somebody for being vulnerable and trying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we closed, I actually wanted to talk about why I feel like as we're getting older and recognizing mortality, I loved how we were talking about the 4,000 weeks.
Yeah.
So I actually want to let you explain it from your viewpoint.
Yeah, so I haven't bought the poster myself yet. I had just emailed them yesterday asking if they had an affiliate program because it's something that I do want to promote. But essentially, it's a simple concept. It's a poster with a bunch of squares, 4,000 squares.
Yeah.
And each square represents 1 week of your life. Because on average, you get 4,000 weeks. So you go to their website, you enter your birth date, and then they ship you the poster with some of the squares filled in, showing how long you've lived. And then after you get the poster, it's your job to fill in each square as each week passes. And so eventually it's a visual representation of how much time you have left. And to some, it's going to be morbid. To some, it's going to be like, why would you think about that? To others, like myself and you, it's like motivating. It's a reminder that, you know, we have a limited time on Earth. You should do what you want to do. You should spend it with the people you love. You should spend it doing the things that you love, you know? So that's essentially the 4,000 weeks poster. Funny enough, their description of the poster is slightly terrifying, extremely effective. And that's exactly how I would describe it. Because, you know, what happens if you are faced daily with, hey, you have this much time left? What would you do? Would you sit and cower and just wait out the clock? Or are you going to be like, I'm going to go live my life. I'm going to go do the things that I want to do. You know, 4,000 weeks sponsor us.
4,000 weeks sponsor us, please.
Yeah, another person that you could interview is whoever founded 4,000 Weeks.
Yeah. I mean, the podcast is essentially in line, you know, with the mission of the causes of growth. Because, yes, with mortality, okay, maybe obviously I've never been diagnosed with cancer, but our mother was. People who are at end of life, and actually one of my closest friends, Brendan, speaks about this so passionately. because he had a autoimmune condition to where his lungs just stopped working.
Mm-hmm.
To breathe,
Yeah.
which is something we do subconsciously, he couldn't do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he himself recognized the fragility and beauty of life because he was going to die, because he was dying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, the concept of mortality shouldn't be, oh, I have this much left to live. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Or I have this much left to live. Why try?
Mm-hmm.
I think when that poster comes in, because I'm year 30, I'm literally pushing 30
Mm-hmm.
in the next 4 years or so. When the poster comes in for me, I wonder if I'll be met with like this, damn, I wasted 20 years.
Yeah.
Or if I'll look at it with renewed vigor and inspiration
Yeah.
and virility. And try to like ascertain this position to where I'm like, I'm on borrowed time.
Yeah.
I'm on borrowed time.
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to do with the borrowed time?
Exactly. So, yeah, you shouldn't. Again, going back to the very beginning, like giving advice to my younger self. It's the same advice I give to my current self. Don't worry so much about what other people think of you. Worry about what previous you was doing.
Yeah.
Because as long as you're continuously improving, I would say you're living a good life.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think another book you'd like if you haven't read it is actually The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson.
Oh yeah, I think that's on my to read list.
Yeah, I think you'd like that one too. Like it goes in tandem with like Atomic Habits because he harps on if you are saying yes to things now, you're saying no to things later.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say no to things now, you say yes to things later.
Yeah.
And when one door closes, another one opens. I
Yeah.
know that's like a quote that mom has like thrown in our face all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, we are hitting closing time. I really wish that like my cameras had the capacity for like a 4 or 5 hour podcast,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't yet.
Mm-hmm.
And like the room has to be like reserved for a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
But do you have any closing thoughts or any closing questions for me?
Closing thoughts is, I'm so proud of you for doing this. For living your dream, for starting, for taking action. It's usually like that first step is the hardest for a lot of people, for everyone. But you've taken that first step and you've started building your system, and eventually, I could see you having your own iced coffee hour podcast, like Rem Stefan, if that's your goal. But questions like, I don't really have any questions right now, but I just wanted to say how proud of you I was. If, you were feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome, you shouldn't. Literally everybody is just trying to make their own way and living their own life. So, yeah, no, closing thoughts is keep doing what you're doing. Keep taking action. And for any listeners out there who watch this, start taking action if you haven't already, because you have a story worth sharing. You have an audience out there, but you're not going to reach that audience unless you take action.
Put in the work.
Yeah.
Right before we go, when talking on imposter syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
Have a Good Day Studio, you saw, like, as we walked out from the elevator, that studio is owned by Ate Ethel,
Mhm.
super awesome woman. Next door, actually, to her is Astoria Agency.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, like, coming into a founder's party and being heartbroken
Mm-hmm.
because, like, here they are. Like, here are these awesome startups that have, like, covered name brands, like, I don't know, like Amazon, Spotify. Like, Luce down the road is, like, I think like they might be working on a Michelin star.
Mm-hmm.
Or, and I remember thinking, like, what is the point? I am such, like, what's the point of me being here when these two big dogs are here? And I remember them turning to me saying, and extending their hand and saying, it's nice to finally meet you in person.
Mm-hmm.
You're Deseo Media, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that, like, melting the doubt away.
Mm-hmm.
And every affirmation that comes from my family is the foundation on which I stand.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't be more grateful.
Yeah.
I'm extremely proud of you too. I think that I never would have gotten this far had I not witnessed your accomplishments either. And who knows where the next 20 years will will lead us.
Yeah. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to fill in that that box on the poster and kind of reminisce and look back. So thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this. I can't wait to see which other guests you have in the future.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, this doesn't have to be like the only podcast. Granted, like I do live in Virginia and you live in California, but yeah, like it'd be great to have you on again. We didn't get to talk about GME. That's like a whole other conversation. We are part of history.
Okay, yeah, we'll save that for another episode.
Yeah, the stonks.
Yeah, but
Game stonk.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely for another podcast.
So yeah.
But do you have anything else?
I don't think so. This has been fun. It's already 10:55, and you weren't lying when you said you'd be surprised how long we could talk.
Yeah.
For. So yeah, this has been great.
Yeah.
I love you. I'm proud of you. If you're thinking of becoming an entrepreneur, whoever's watching, and you need affirmation, this is it. I love you, and I'm proud of you, and you should do it.
Love you too. Thank you so much for hopping on Auxano. Guys, thank you so much for listening. This is Auxano with my older brother, Kuya AJ. Thank you so much for hopping on.
Yeah.
And to the guests, as per usual, be well and walk tall.